Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe with Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock. If you're watching on YouTube, we're doing an Orange and Brown Talk first. We're all in the same room recording this podcast on video. We've done it like just audio only. So if you go to Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com, a little history being made here on the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. All right, so this is our Browns Steelers preview. Typical as always, one little addition. Brian Batko from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is going to join us in the next segment to preview the Steelers. Then, of course, Lance Reisland will give us his scouting report. We'll come back and make our picks as well. But let's do some storylines. We do need to talk about this Greg Newsome trade as well. But let's just start here because the big storyline, and we're recording this, it's about 5:45 on Thursday. You'll probably hear this before Kevin Stefanski speaks on Friday. If for some reason you don't, if you're listening over the weekend or whatever, maybe we'll have an answer for this. But I mean, Mary Kay, I just think we've got to start with this backup quarterback situation because today we got to talk to Shedeur Sanders. This is the topic of the week because obviously Dylan Gabriel is starting, but with the trade of Joe Flacco, what's going to happen here at QB2? And 24 hours after we talked about it on our last pod, still no real clarity on this other than Shedeur has spoken.
No, and it's so funny that there is so much attention being devoted to the backup quarterback. But when you have Shedeur Sanders in town, that's how it's going to go, right? I mean, that's just what it's going to be. There's no avoiding it. So we did talk to Shedeur today. He's always pleasant to talk to. He's engaging. He's dynamic. He's got a ton of personality. He feels ready to go. He did say that he's swearing off any negativity. He got asked a question about the harsh criticism from Rex Ryan, and he said he's done. He's done with negativity, and now it's all positive from here on out. So he feels ready to play. Look, if he feels ready to start, we certainly know he feels ready to be the backup. So we'll find out soon enough, but it almost seems to me like it's trending towards him being QB2.
Yeah, that's sort of how I feel too. I mean, Ashley, this is sort of like Zen Ashley here. Shedeur is embracing Zen Ashley. Hopefully it'll go a little better than Zen Ashley has gone.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, we've still never met Zen Ashley. She's been a joke since about 2022. But Shedeur, I think, can walk the walk a little better than I can. But I agree. Like, I think being around this team, we all know by now. I mean, I'm the newest person on the beat, a whole 5 seasons in. But even I can just tell. You can tell when things are trending a certain way, even when they won't say something. And the vibes I'm getting just seem to be pointing to that Shedeur is likely to be the backup. And I still don't want to hear what the online chatter will be like if he is not the backup, and if it is in fact Bailey Zappi, their other option. So that I think could get ugly if it does not pan out this way that it feels like it's going to pan out.
Okay, the other thing we got to talk about, of course, because it happened after we potted on Wednesday, is this Greg Newsome trade. So the Browns trade Greg Newsome, a cornerback for cornerback swap. There were also picks involved in this, but of course the meat of the deal was Greg Newsome to the Jaguars, and the Browns get back Tyson Campbell. Interesting, both were drafted in the same draft. Longtime listeners might remember that Doug Maurice really loved Tyson Campbell.
Really?
He did, yes.
Wow.
He really liked him. So I don't know, maybe Doug can call in or something and give us some Tyson Campbell talk. But Mary Kay, this was an interesting trade. Obviously, Greg Newsome playing out that 5th-year option, finally starting on the outside again. And I think we all feel like he was playing pretty well out there, but the Browns make the decision to go in a different direction. As far as you can tell, what was their thinking on this?
Well, I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. There's 2 reasons why they made this trade. Number 1, it was an economic decision. And number 2, it was an on-the-field decision. So in its simplest terms, Greg Newsome is in the final year of his contract. He's playing out his 5th-year option. It was about $13.4 million. Now, Tyson Campbell is signed all the way through 2028. The Jaguars gave him a blockbuster 4-year extension worth $76.5 million, which averages $19.1 million a year. That's almost Denzel Ward money, and he's a 4-time Pro Bowler. So he's making a lot of money. That's the 12th highest paid cornerback in the NFL. But a lot of that money in this new contract has already been paid by the Jaguars, and they're not getting any of it back. So the Browns kind of get a little bit of a bargain on Tyson Campbell, and he comes at a discounted price over an extension to Greg Newsome, what that would have cost them. That would have been in the $20 million a year range. They're getting Tyson Campbell for about 15, maybe 15.5. So discounted cornerback, and the deal's already done. All they have to do is plug and play. And he was here at practice today. So that's number one. The other part of it is the fact that he's coming into play and excel at more of a man-centric scheme. And Greg is going down to the Jaguars to play in more of a zone-oriented scheme. So from a football standpoint, it just made sense for both teams. So now the Browns, they would have seriously considered extending Greg, but now they don't have to do that. They've got someone sort of comparable at a little bit of a less price, but everybody's going to miss Greg. I mean, we're going to miss Greg in the locker room. He's a great guy, great in the community. Jim Schwartz is going to miss him. Just a really, really good guy to have around.
Yeah, Greg was always great after games. He was, certainly a good guy candidate here every single year. Just one of those guys that you liked talking to in the locker room, all of the stuff that of course we love. And again, was having a very good year this year. But I think, so my first thought is, wait a second, Jacksonville's a 3-1 football team, 4-1 football team, just beat the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, and they're trading this guy. Like, what am I missing here? But at least for now, the simplest explanation are those two things. So the Browns essentially gave an extension to a cornerback. It wasn't Greg Newsome. They just traded for a guy who had already been extended, and it's the scheme fit. And even Jim Schwartz laid that out today. This is a guy that can play a physical man system, and maybe he just fits longer term better than Greg does.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Schwartz even said he can see how he fits better in this system than that one in Jacksonville. That's a new defensive coordinator down there. The scheme is different than the one he was drafted in. And you do see this with players sometimes. It's a guy who earned an extension, but there's a regime change, there's coaching changes, and suddenly, while they may be good, they are not fits for the new identity of that team. But I mean, look, my first reaction when I saw they traded him was obviously like, this is a strange deal. Like no one thought that this was going to happen yesterday or anything, right? But also the fact that Greg, like as Mary Kay was saying there, like he's such a glue guy to me in this locker room. He is great to us, but for me, it's more so about he was one of those guys, and you would see it keeping morale high just by being who he is, his personality, even when times weren't so good with this football team. I mean, I thought he especially did that last year when they went 3-14. I thought he was doing that this year as they get off to this 1-4 start. And I had a chance to catch up with Denzel Ward today. A small group of us did. And Denzel said he was hurt by this, which makes sense, right? They've played together now for 5 years. When they're both healthy, this is one of the best corner duos in the league. Joe Burrow even said that after week 1, that he doesn't think there's another tandem like those two in the NFL right now. And that was after a Bengals win, right? So I just think you see that guys were having a bit of reactions today. Denzel said he shed some tears for Greg, but he did say when I asked, like, do you still feel like winning is the goal for this football team? That he said yes, he felt like that was still their goal. And I felt like that was a message we kind of heard echoed multiple times today. And given the circumstances of the trade, I guess I can see where they're coming from on that.
Yeah, and then look, because it was, you're trading for a young player who's under contract, and even the Joe Flacco deal, right? That was a guy that wasn't going to play again. I know it might feel like, oh my God, they made 2 trades in a week. Is this a fire sale? I think, first of all, we don't see fire sales in the NFL of that nature. It just doesn't happen like that. But also, both of these trades make sense from a, just team building standpoint. Again, Joe was not going to start for this team again unless Dylan got hurt or, and they weren't ready to hand things to Shador or something like that. You traded Greg Newsome for a player in a similar situation, but he's under contract now. We'll see if it was the right move. We'll see if it worked out. But listen, I do think if the Browns lose on Sunday to the Steelers, we might see some more guys moved, and there might be a little bit of a fire sale feel as they kind of look at some of the guys who are aging. Maybe they can move them and not have to eat a bunch of dead money, get some more picks. They're certainly acquiring a ton of picks right now in 2026. So it could happen, but I don't feel like these two moves specifically, Mary Kay, are like, I don't know that these are like we're waving the white, just outright waving the white flag types of moves.
No, not at all, because really you are getting in return for Greg Newsome a comparable player. So if you had just jettisoned Greg Newsome, you might look at that as, oh, what are we doing here? And that could send the wrong message to some of your veterans in the locker room. But knowing that you're getting back a player of equal value for the most part at a little bit of a discounted price, it makes fiscal and football sense for the Cleveland Browns to do this. Hard for these guys to take it like Denzel because they're close, and I'm sure we'll hear the same thing from Grant tomorrow. But this was just it was a smart roster move for them. We'll see how it works out on the football field because, like we've been talking about, Greg Newsome was off to, I think, the best start of his career since I've seen him here as a rookie in 2021. I thought he was playing great ball. And, the game has slowed down for him. He was back on the outside as a starter after a year of not starting on the outside. Martin Emerson had that spot last year. And so he was hungrier and he was ready to go out there and show what he could do and also maybe secure that contract for him and his family. Speaking of Martin Emerson Jr., this Tyson Campbell acquisition is an insurance policy against the loss of Martin Emerson Jr. as well, because he ruptured an Achilles and his contract is up and we don't know if he's coming back. That's just the truth. I mean, that's how football goes. So we'll have to see. I mean, hopefully he'll come back. He's another guy that, this whole panel really thinks very highly of. And, we like him as a person and as a player, but the reality of the situation is there's no guarantee he's coming back either. So now for next year, they have their two starting cornerbacks, and that's something that they didn't know or have definitely figured out yet as of yesterday. So that is not fire sale. And then Joe Flacco, I was asked about this on the radio this morning, and, people were saying, how could Kevin Stefanski, been so blindsided by this? And I think that's a misinterpretation of what happened here. When he talks about the fact that it was a surprise, I think the surprise came in the phone call they got from the Bengals, not the fact that Kevin Stefanski was sitting in his office and, and they blindsided him. Hey, by the way, Joe's got, that's not how they operate. That's not how they operate. Andrew and Kevin, they are in constant communication with each other. They're in lockstep, and they're not going to pull the rug out from underneath Kevin Stefanski. That's not how this works. Having said that, this was not some kind of a move that even if they didn't have a chance to tell him before they had to finalize it, that he would have said, oh, no, you can't do that. Why would you need to keep Joe Flacco around this year? Why would you need to? You would not need to, because he's not playing football anymore for the Cleveland Browns this season. It wasn't going to happen. He was probably going to go in as a backup, maybe for even a couple more weeks, but even that would have ended soon enough. So this was just a win-win, I think, for both teams, for both sides. Joe gets a chance to go down to Cincinnati, start more games, play more games, see if he can't keep his career going for a while. And the Browns get just a little bit of a bump up in a draft pick.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the only argument against it would be if you believe you can get back in this division race and compete for a wild card. And I don't know if they're looking at this, if Andrew's sitting there saying, yeah, that's what we can do. You did help out a team you're chasing, right? A team that was essentially left for dead. They weren't going anywhere with Jake Browning. And we don't even know if Joe's going to be good there, right? We don't know if it's going to look like it did here in Cleveland or if it's going to be like it was here in 2023 and Joe lights things up for the Bengals. So there's that part of it too. But that's the only part of it that I'm kind of like, are you sure you wanted to trade him there? But I understand why they would make that deal. And certainly if they like Tyson Campbell just better as a scheme fit than they do Greg Newsome, I can see why they would make this deal. We'll see. It'll all play out I know it's a boring take. All of this will play out over the next few weeks, over the next few months, and in the case of Newsome and Campbell over the next few years. But at least on paper, Ashley, I can understand why they made these deals and why it's not necessarily like fire sale, everybody's out of here.
Yeah, like truly for me, I'm the same way. The only odd thing in both of these deals, truly, once we've had some time to digest it, to me is the intra-division part. But like, that's so odd in general, right? The Browns haven't been a part of many intra-division trades that involve players. I think we only found two, if I'm remembering correctly, back to the other day.
Both to the Steelers,
yeah,
I think,
both
too.
to the Steelers. Yeah, this was the first one with the Bengals. And then I saw a stat from ESPN research where this was only the third trade since this century involving intra-division trade involving quarterbacks. So there had only been 2 of these before today, or before Tuesday this century. So that to me, it still is weird because of what you're saying, Dan. Like, why would you hypothetically even risk helping the Bengals? I still don't understand that part of it. But yeah, I mean, look, the Greg Newsome trade is basically a player for player trade because it came with that pick swap too. It essentially all cancels out. So that to me is more standard, and you consider the financial implications of it. It makes a bit more sense. But yeah, it's kind of not surprising we ended up here, I guess.
All right, I promised storylines to the people here in this first segment, so we don't have to spend a ton of time on it. But Mary Kay, when you look at this Browns-Steelers matchup, what's something you're watching?
Well, I think we have to go back once again to the quarterback situation. Dylan Gabriel making his second career start. He's coming off of that 21-17 loss to the Vikings, but he did some good things in that game. They stalled in the fourth quarter miserably. Everybody just fell apart on the Cleveland Browns in the fourth quarter. Offensively, defensively, you name it, they fell apart. But up until that point, I thought he did what we expected him to do, which was play with poise, with composure, use his legs, extend plays, go to the right place with the football for the most part. And it was a decent, not spectacular, decent rookie debut. Going to get a lot harder in Pittsburgh, right? It's going to get a lot harder in Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Steelers sacked Carson Wentz 6 times in their victory over the Vikings in Dublin just the week before. So this is going to be very, very difficult. We don't know yet who the starting tackles are going to be. But when you have tackle issues like that, it can be a very, very long afternoon. He's going to have to churn those little legs to get out, to get out of trouble. There's no question about that. So, and I didn't mean little legs. I just meant churn those legs a little. But anyways, he's going to have to move. He's going to have to be on the move to get away from TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Alex Highsmith. Mike Tomlin eats rookie quarterbacks for breakfast. He's 26-6 against rookie quarterbacks. Ironically, the last one who won a game against him was Dorian Thompson-Robinson in 2023. So a 13-10 victory. So it can be done. It can be done. But the Steelers are coming off of a bye. And it's not going to be easy, especially when the Browns just don't really have their passing game in gear yet. So that's my storyline.
All right, Ashley, you got something for us?
Yeah, I think mine kind of goes along with Mary Kay's a little bit, but I'll phrase it like this. Do the Browns have any hope of winning the turnover battle in this game? My gut tells me the answer is no, because the Steelers are currently second in the NFL with 10 takeaways, and they've had one fewer game than most people because they took their bye after their international game. So they were off last week and still number 2 in the NFL right now. 5 forced fumbles, 5 interceptions. And this defense, we were talking about this earlier in the week, Dan, this defense isn't necessarily particularly great, but they're very good at making splash plays. And obviously that front with TJ Watt, the headline there is still very formidable. I think Cam Hayward is going to really be trying to bat down some passes. Mary Kay, maybe you remember the number I said yesterday, because now I can't. Do you remember how many batted passes I said their defense had? Was it like 7?
7. It's 7.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I guessed
You guessed 8. And I said, how does she do this? I have no idea. So they have 7 batted passes already. I think it's going to be really important, again, to go along with the first storyline here, for Dylan Gabriel to play a clean game. But the Browns, if they want to have any chance at surprising in this game, their defense is going to have to take the ball away as well. Of course, Aaron Rodgers, Jim Schwartz, very familiar with each other given their prior career stops. But the Browns are going to have to get some turnover luck like they did against the Vikings and actually capitalize on it.
Yeah, and with Aaron Rodgers, just to talk a little bit about him, obviously, he does some things that are sort of kryptonite for this Browns defense, and that's gets the ball out quickly. Now, his average attempt of target this year is really low. They are not throwing the ball downfield a lot. Maybe that'll happen over time here, but they're a very yards after the catch-oriented football team. But the ball comes out quick. He knows where he wants to go with it. He's very decisive, obviously. And the other thing, and Jim Schwartz talked about this today, Aaron Rodgers, great with the hard count. So, a couple Myles Garrett's offsides, and he's great at he made a living off this in Green Bay. Oh, a guy's slow getting off the field, we're going to snap the ball and take a shot. So those are the things the Browns, they can't give up these long passes because Aaron Rodgers is so good at these free play long passes because he's so good at getting you off sides and then he throws it downfield, catch you slow subbing. And we saw the Packers get the Browns on this back in week 3. Catch you with the slow substitution. He's going to snap it. They're going to look downfield and try to get a big play out of that. So those are some things that are kind of kryptonite for the Browns defense. Let's see if they can avoid some of those mistakes. All right, we are going to take a break here on our preview edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. On the other side, Brian Batko is going to join us. He's from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He's going to tell you everything you need to know about the Steelers. Lance Reisland is going to give you his Steelers scouting report after that, and then we'll be back and we will make our picks for Sunday's game in Pittsburgh. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Our Browns Steelers preview edition continues here, and we welcome on from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, covers the Steelers, Brian Batko. Brian, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, no problem, Dan. Thanks for having me on, returning the favor. I had Ashley on our show this week. So, yeah, good vibes between the Browns and the Steelers beats this week.
Okay, let's get to it, and let's start with the obvious guy that we want to talk about, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Comes to Pittsburgh. It doesn't look like, he's slinging the ball all over the place. The passing offense looks a little shorter. This is not Green Bay Aaron Rodgers, but how have things gone with Aaron so far in the first part of this season?
Yeah, I think that it's been a lot of short stuff, a lot of quick game, and, people on the outside, I think even when this marriage first started between Rodgers and the Steelers, sort of sitting there thinking, all right, can he still get it done at age 41? Is he okay with getting hit, or is he going to be playing a conservative brand of quarterback? It doesn't really lend itself to a high upside offense. Thus far, through 4 games, I would say there's something to that, but I also think there's another level they can reach. And we actually just talked to offensive coordinator, play caller Arthur Smith here in Pittsburgh, who said it's been really good that Aaron Rodgers has strong opinions. And he jokingly said, yes, of course, Aaron has a strong opinion on this, on anything, but on basically when and how to attack, when to sort of pick your spots. There's going to be times where defenses are playing, too deep, and you just kind of have to dump it off and live to fight another day. And fortunately for him and the Steelers thus far, they've had really good safety valves in that way. And Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell out of the backfield. And then, of course, DK Metcalf, if you get him the ball in space, he can turn any routine play into a touchdown like he did against the Vikings. So I think it's been not spectacular thus far for Aaron Rodgers, but good enough to get the job done as they've done 3 out of 4 weeks.
How has DK Metcalf, you mentioned that big play ability that he has, especially, that catch and run ability. How has he kind of integrated into this offense? And obviously, the move on from George Pickens, how is DK sort of, like I said, how is he integrated into this offense? And also, who are some of the other guys in that receiving core? I know Calvin Austin is on the injury report. I'm not sure what his status is yet, but who are some of the other guys in that receiving core?
Yeah, starting with DK, I think it's almost more interesting how he's integrated into this team because, Browns fans know from over the years playing the Steelers, things have gotten chippy with some of the, I would say, less mature receivers that they've had in the likes of George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, even Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster to a lesser extent as far as, red flags with the team. But DK Metcalf's been the adult in the room here, honestly, and I think they've needed that for a long time on this offense, in this receiving core. He's so laser-focused. I didn't necessarily know his personality that way, and I think he's been really good for this group. He actually kind of stuck up for Calvin Austin when he got injured a couple weeks ago in Ireland. He's, Calvin Austin's like my height. He's like 5'7". He's like everybody's little brother on this team, and DK Metcalf had his back against the Vikings. So he's been a great addition by GM Omar Khan. Schematically, I think he should fit into any offense in the NFL. If you don't know how to use a 6'4", 235-pound guy who runs 4.3, then you probably shouldn't be coaching in the NFL. So he's been a plus. Beyond him, I don't think Austin's going to play this week. I think that shoulder issue is going to keep him out for at least 1 full game, if not more. And that becomes the biggest concern for a lot of Steelers fans is wide receiver 2. People are obsessed with who is wide receiver 2 here. And it's been a topic of discussion since they traded George Pickens to the Cowboys. I think it's going to be a rotating approach where there's not going to be a true guy like that, the Chris Carter to the Randy Moss. It's going to be a, Scotty Miller here and there, a veteran who's been around. Roman Wilson, who's trying to catch on as a second-year, third-round pick out of Michigan. Ben Skoranek kind of does the dirty work as a bigger body. So it's really more so about getting the tight ends involved. Pat Freiermuth and Jonnu Smith, they haven't done much to this point in the season, but those guys are the ones who are sort of the next men up to get those targets.
Yeah, it's kind of just hitting me as we're talking that the two guys involved in one of my favorite plays from last year, the fight mid-Hail Mary, George Pickens and Greg Newsome are no longer with the Steelers on one side and the Browns on the other. Let's talk about that Steelers offensive line. Obviously, they've got to deal with Myles Garrett. They've got to deal with this Browns pass rush, which is really the strength of this whole defense. How is that offensive line equipped to deal with this Browns pass rush?
I think they're going to need some X's and O's help, some schematic help, as Mike Tomlin always says, especially left tackle Broderick Jones. I think it's too early to write him off as a first-round bust, but, he hasn't played up to the expectations that a lot of Steelers fans have had for him, and now he replaces Dan Moore Jr., who was Myles Garrett's sparring partner in this matchup for the better part of the last 4 years. Is Jones ready? To be honest, I don't know, but I think he's also going to have his former Georgia Bulldog teammate Darnell Washington flanking him to his left as an inline tight end. And honestly, when you see those two guys side by side, Darnell Washington, the tight end, might be bigger than Broderick Jones, the left tackle. And, that's really what he was brought in to do, be that sixth lineman, an extra big body up front. And he's especially valuable in these weeks against the Browns and really any 4-3 team. But, when you have Myles Garrett on the schedule, you have to game plan for him. The jumbo package helped the Steelers run the ball against the Vikings this week. I think it helps them not only run the ball, but probably protect Aaron Rodgers. So the offensive line here is a work in progress for sure. I think the interior would love to be what the Browns have up the middle someday with their guards and center. But the tackles, while they've got a lot of draft pedigree, those two guys are still kind of learning on the job.
So that Steelers defense, when I look at it, obviously statistically, maybe not traditionally what you'd expect from a Steelers defense, but it just strikes me as they're kind of a big play defense. They're kind of a splash defense. Is that, with all the turnovers, things like that, is that a good way to describe what this defense is right now?
Yeah, and it ends up being asked around here a lot, like, is it sustainable? Can you be bend but don't break all the way into December and January football and get to where you want to go, winning a playoff game for the first time in 9 years? I'm not really sure. I feel like any team that generates a lot of turnovers, gets a lot of takeaways, it's inherently a question of like, okay, is this a little bit fluky? Is there some puck luck involved, to borrow a hockey term? Maybe, because it's a weird shaped football that takes quirky bounces, but the Steelers also just seem to have such a knack for that, whether it's TJ Watt's punch to force fumbles, Cam Hayward getting his hands up to bat passes that end up getting picked off by someone else in the linebacking core or in the secondary. Jalen Ramsey's been really good at that over the course of his career, although I don't think he's going to play this week because of his hamstring issue. So, they've been hemorrhaging yards for sure. They were really, really weak against the run the first couple games against the Jets and the Seahawks. They've shored that up a little bit, but I think Quinshon Judkins and the Browns O-line is probably a bigger challenge that way than the Patriots or the Vikings were in these last couple weeks. So it has been an opportunistic defense, much more than it's been a stout, consistent defense. But these guys pride themselves on that takeaway culture, and it's tough to argue with the numbers.
So sticking with that defense and TJ Watt, obviously the Browns have had some troubles at left tackle. They haven't quite figured that out yet. At right tackle, Jack Conklin is back. And I remember in the last matchup, even though the Browns' weak side was that left side, TJ Watt, who generally lines up in one spot, was going against Jack Conklin for most of that game. Has he moved around more at all this year? Is he still sort of just lining up on the one side? Has anything changed with how they're using TJ Watt over there?
Not really. I mean, there was a lot of talk about that in the offseason because he had such a drought, really, at the end of the 2024 campaign, and including the wild card playoff loss to the Bills, where he wasn't getting in the sack column like we're used to seeing. So a big part of this training camp, experience for the Steelers was, hey, let's try to move TJ around. Let's see if that can be a wrinkle that works to our advantage. Maybe they just haven't really needed it yet, but we haven't seen it. He's been lining up on his typical left side. His running mate on the other side, Alex Highsmith, has been hurt since he wreaked havoc week 1 against the Jets. But Nick Herbig has been filling in admirably, and if TJ Watt is a wrecking ball, Nick Herbig is like a fastball coming off the other edge. So, you're going to have Alex Highsmith bringing a lot of brute strength, a really good spin move to whoever's playing left tackle for the Browns. And then you'll have Nick Herbig, just a straight speed rusher who can bend the edge. And, once he gets there, he closes quickly. He's undersized, but it hasn't been a deterrent for him thus far in the NFL. The Steelers are using him well, and he just he has a knack for pass rushing moves and making things happen at outside linebacker.
So you mentioned the word sustainability with this defense, and when you look at just this Steelers start as a whole at 3-1, how real does that feel to you?
I actually thought they were going to be 4-0 because of the schedule, but I thought things would get tougher for them later on. And, I probably would have said they'd be 5-0 because I didn't think the Browns were going to pose much of an issue coming off the London game, Steelers coming off the bye week, having it at Acrisure Stadium. So it feels real in the sense of, they've beaten the teams that, in my view, Dan, that they're supposed to beat, other than probably even the Seahawks at home. But Seattle seems a little bit more feisty than I thought they would have been coming into this season. So I still think that, I need to see more from the offensive line. I still think the secondary, especially if they don't have Jalen Ramsey, is going to run into some difficult matchups. But, this team, I always tell people I'll believe it when I see it for them to get over the hump and win a playoff game again. But I'll also believe it when I see it for them to have their first under 500 season since 2003. It's a streak that always gets attached to Mike Tomlin, but it actually predates him with the franchise. It was a sort of a Ben Roethlisberger / Mike Tomlin streak until Ben retired. So I just, for whatever reason, they always find a way to be competitive over the course of the entire year. Some people thought the bottom might fall out this year with the Aaron Rodgers experiment. That hasn't happened, and if anything, they're off to a good start to keep that run going. I just am not ready yet to say that they can be a team that is punching up in the weight class above them in the AFC with the likes of the Chiefs and the Bills.
Okay, I'll let you go with this one. And obviously, I'm sure, you guys make picks on your own and over at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. So if you don't want to just outright make a pick here, that's fine. But do you have a lean in this game?
I do. I'm leaning Steelers. And, I'm not just a homer who always picks them, but I just think this Browns team, not just the roster that they've assembled and, some of the injuries that they're dealing with, but, shipping off guys like Joe Flacco and Greg Newsome and kind of that eye on the future. I mean, there's one team showing up at 1 p.m. Sunday who's got their eye on the prize, and there's another who's kind of thinking long-term. The Steelers, they really should not lose this game. And again, you go back to the rest aspect of it too. They're coming off of their bye week. They're getting a little healthier other than Jalen Ramsey and Calvin Austin. I think the pass rush is really going to heat up Dylan Gabriel and make life tough on him in his first true road start. So I'm going to go Steelers 21, Browns 10, subject to change, but that's the way I'm leaning right now.
Okay, that is Brian Batko from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Brian, where can people find you real quick?
Just my name on X, Brian Batko, and then post-gazette.com/sports. We've also got a PG Sports Now YouTube channel where we're pumping out the Steelers content daily. So if you're bored, driving in the car, you want to listen to some stuff from the other side, go ahead and check us out.
All right, thanks a lot. I appreciate you taking time to do this. We're going to take a break on our Browns-Steelers preview edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, and when we come back, Lance Risland will join us, and he'll give us his scouting report on the Steelers as well. Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Our Browns-Steelers preview continues here, and we welcome on, as we do every week, Lance Risland. Lance, how are you?
Dan, I'm well. How are you tonight, buddy?
Doing well. All right, let's get to it. Browns at Steelers on Sunday at Acrisure Stadium. I thought Bubba Ventrone said it best. It's still Heinz Field. Come on now. We know it's always Heinz Field. But Browns Steelers, let's just start here with Aaron Rodgers. You look at some of the numbers. You look at, some of his, time to throw. You look at his depth of target, things like that. This is not Green Bay Aaron Rodgers. It's a quick, short passing game. What are you seeing from Aaron right now?
Well, the thing that he does not do that you saw for years, especially when I first started about 4 or 5 years ago, breaking down these films pretty religiously, he doesn't move within the pocket as well as he did, and he cannot throw from all the platforms he used to throw. You heard people ask me today, is he the best? Kevin said he's the best pure passer of the football ever. And I've heard that a couple of times. And I understand why he says that, because mechanically he's as good as it gets, especially when it comes over the top. But the thing that's, kind of father time with everybody, the thing that's really caught up with him is his ability to move within the pocket, his escapability, like I said, the ability to throw from different angles. He's got to be fundamentally sound right now to deliver a good football. Does not throw it past 15 yards nearly as accurate as he once did. And once again, he still does a lot of really good things, and he can make a lot of really good throws because he knows where he's going with it. And I always tell people, it's a lot easier to throw the football when you know the coverage and you know where you're going with the ball. And it also helps, as we saw last week, when you have an alpha on the outside. You can do a lot of things wrong and kind of throw it up to an alpha, and they'll make things happen for you.
Yeah, so obviously with that quick passing game, with that yards after the catch, you got to start with DK Metcalf, right? Big, fast guy, can turn short throws into long plays. How does DK look in this Steelers offense so far?
Well, it's interesting because the best way that he's a vertical guy, and they're having trouble getting it vertically down the field, but he's also a really good run after catch guy. He's a really interesting guy. He's got a lot of sudden area of like burst and stuff for a big, huge guy. He's kind of got like some slot tendencies, even though he's an outside one. He's a really talented guy. I think, obviously with the trade of Newsome, getting a bigger body in here in Campbell, but I think, he usually doesn't do that. But Schwartz is also playing more zone than I've ever seen him do. So maybe he will step outside his boundaries. But I believe Ward's their only chance to really slow him down, because the problem is he's so big. When he gets the ball in space, he can not only run away from you like some receivers do, but he can also break tackles like a running back. So they're going to have to really kind of curtail him. I think you got to limit. It sounds as silly as this sounds, I'd make them push the ball vertical to him. I would not give him easy touches and then let him run with it. I would press coverage him, and I would make him beat me vertically over the top.
Okay, you said something interesting there that I want to circle back on, and it's not a Steelers-related thing, but the idea of Jim Schwartz playing more zone. How much more zone is he playing, based on what you've watched? And why do you think that is, if you even have a reason right now?
Well, I don't really, it's just like the reason why I threw the ball in 3rd and 11. Everybody's got their own kind of thoughts in the heat of the battle in that 20 to 30 second window that coaches have. I would say that he's looking, when you're as good as their defense was in 23 and as good as they've been this year, you're always looking for the next thing that can kind of give you an advantage. And right now, the only thing that kind of hurts them once in a while is when they get a back outside, matched up on a linebacker or safety. Some traps and counters inside with those guys getting upfield so much. So for my thought process would be just to try to give the quarterback and the offensive coordinator a little bit different visual, not always let them run man beater routes, especially inside the red zone. So my guess would be they're just looking for a little bit of a switch. It also tells you that when teams are in 11 personnel, that they're not really solid with that guy in the slot on Miles Harden right now. So that would be another reason. I also think as well as he was playing, Greg gave up some passes in one-on-one coverage because of his aggressiveness. This trade, everybody's like, it's a downgrade. I don't think it is, but I'm a scheme guy and a film guy. And Campbell fits more of this man scheme. So if he can come in and be man, maybe they'll get back to him. I think it's trying to get over the top, Dan, and I think it's as a defense to be an elite defense. And then I think it's also personnel in the second, in the secondary, trying to protect them a little bit, knowing that your front seven is as good as it gets.
All right, so let's talk about that front seven. Obviously, the matchup whenever any offensive coordinator starts on the Cleveland Browns, they're going to start with that defensive line, and we know how great it's been. We know, of course, Myles Garrett and the success he's had against the Steelers over the years, basically the entire AFC North over the years. So this Pittsburgh line, we were talking to Ben Batko in the previous segment. He was talking about this offensive line, how, they hope at some point their interior is what the Browns' interior is now, right? And, they've got a different guy going against Myles Garrett, all of that. How does this offensive line for Pittsburgh deal with Myles Garrett, do you think?
You're going to have to help, especially Jones. Jones is a kid out of Georgia. You and I had talked about him a number of years ago in our draft pods. Big physical guy. Once again, those guys who are 6'6" and above really struggle with Myles Garrett because those guys are used to using their length. And when you can use your length combined with your strength, that's how they win. DeJuan Jones wins, and Broderick Jones is in that same category. So they're really going to have to help him on the edge. McCormick's a really good player, physical guy. They're physical inside. Frazier's a physical kid out of West Virginia. He was my number one center on the board when he came out. It's a physical bunch. They're not great in straight drop back protection, which is kind of what they want to do sometimes with Aaron Rodgers. They're very much like the Browns O-line, where they're really effective when they can marry the run with the pass. They're not super when it's just drop back and throw it 60 times. They're not great laterally inside, but if you can marry the run and the pass and make that defensive line, and I was asked to describe what that means. Simply, there's an easy solution. It's the defensive line, when they get in a stance, they're not assuming run or pass. They're going to read what the guy in front of them does. And that slows them down mightily as compared to it's third down and 10, you're getting in a wide three and you're coming. So that's where they're best. They're a big physical bunch. They want to, when you add Washington there at when he goes to the tight end, he's basically another 300-pounder there. So they want to be physical. They want to run the ball at you, and they want to marry that run with the pass. So you're getting a lot of duo, a lot of double teams inside. It's a physical bunch, but they could be had in the pass rush.
So the run game is interesting. Obviously, Kenneth Gainwell has that big game last Sunday against the Vikings, filling in for Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren is a fascinating guy. I always thought when it was him and Najee Harris, Jaylen Warren was so much fun to watch. And now they've really kind of embraced him. It seems like he's going to be back this week. But what does this run game do, and how have they sort of figured out a way to use Jaylen Warren and all the different things that he can do, both on the ground and in that pass game?
Well, they're a heavy duo team. They like to get in duo. They'll run 12 personnel. They like to have Jonnu Smith, Freiermuth, Washington. They'll do 12 and 13 personnel. So they'll once again, they're very similar to the Browns, where they're not real creative in their run game. They're trying to be physical in the run game. So that duo is very much like zone. I've been asked to tell the difference. For me, there's only one difference. It's that you're going straight ahead and you let these backs on zone. They're going one way, right or left. Duo was kind of straight ahead. Junkins has had a lot of success with that. But that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to physically move the Browns. I think what they'll do is they'll cut their splits a little bit. They're going to try to limit those. If you watch the Browns, Mason Graham and Malik Collins, if they don't get off the ball, they can be doubled and moved a little bit. So I think what the Steelers will do, like all of us coordinators at any level, is that they'll cut their splits. They'll try to reduce the amount of space between the guard and the tackle, tight end, center guard, etc., and just try to physically get toe to toe per se, and try to move these guys back, because the Browns, obviously, if you're a gap penetrating team, you're not great on taking on doubles because you don't do it often. And so that would be my thought. But it's a pretty simple run game. It's a lot of doubles, some zone here and there. They'll run some, like every NFL team, just like defensively, they'll run a multitude of things. But really, they're just looking for double teams in that duo and inside zone.
All right, let's move to the defensive side of the ball here. And obviously, there's some names people know: Alex Highsmith, T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward. But when I describe this defense, I think one of the ways I describe it is, like, statistically, they are not putting up great numbers. They're very bend but don't break, but they are a kind of a splash play defense. They forced a bunch of turnovers. They make big plays. They make game-changing types of plays. What are your thoughts on this Pittsburgh defense and how the Browns can attack?
Well, you're absolutely right. And the more I watch film in the NFL, as compared to high school and college, some D coordinators will let you have what you want from 20 to 20, and they're going to try to figure you out, and then they're going to change it up, and it's a totally different defense. They're going to try to create turnovers. They're going to try to hold you to 3 points. The ability for these kickers now to kick 60-yard field goals like it's easy. You have to go 30 yards for a field goal. So it's more about holding teams. It's almost like holding serve for these non-elite defenses. Now, the Browns defense is a little bit different, where they're trying to shut you out. The Steelers defense, I feel like many NFL defense, they're trying to prevent 7. And so they do a lot of things. Now, J.J. Watt, I think, is a guy who has been good. However, he has not been as dominant, especially he always played the run very well. He's not playing the run very well. Obviously, Hayward inside is good, but he's slowed down. The guy I love, and you remember from the draft, Keanu inside, he is really, really heavy inside. Got a linebacker, 2 linebackers, obviously Patrick Queen coming over last year from the Baltimore Ravens, and then Peyton Wilson, a guy that, I know you've heard me talk about in the past, him and Ivan Pace. Those guys have 70 tackles. Queen and Wilson have 70 tackles combined. So, again, those 2 guys can cover very well in the backfield. It's a very typical odd front Pittsburgh defense where they're going to try to hold you up front, and they're going to, try to occupy all those guys up front, not let any of those guys get to the second level, and then let Queen and Wilson run around and make the tackles. And they're really good at it. Secondary, aggressive, Ramsey, Slay, these guys can be had in double moves. They're very aggressive. They're almost too veteran savvy in my opinion. They think those DBs are kind of like receivers where they think they know kind of sometimes, you might hit them with a double move. You might hit with a slant and go, hitch and go, things like that. Aggressive, opportunistic, like you said. They're going to bend, and they're going to try to create a turnover. They're going to try to get a strip sack. They're going to try to, like I said, kind of Benton inside, I think is going to be their next really good Steeler interior lineman. Just a really solid, typical Steelers physical, downhill, in-your-face type defense.
All right, so here we go, Lance. You get to lead us off with your picks here. Well, I guess people heard Brian make his pick in the Steelers segment, but what are you picking in this football game?
Well, it's amazing when, the season starts and everybody's like, the Browns are going to win 5 games, and then they're off to a slow start against a brutal schedule. I think the Browns are going to win. I think it's going to be close, but I think, once again, I think the defensive line is going to – they didn't play as well as I thought they would last week, but I think they will play well again. They played well in that second half against the Vikings. I got the Browns in a close one. I'm going to go 17-16 Browns. It's going to be a tight one. But I think the Browns aren't – it's amazing. The Browns aren't as bad as people think they are. They have some elite players. They just have to figure out how to finish drives. And they have to continue to get more and more turnovers, which I think they will.
Okay, there we go. Scouting report there on the Steelers from Lance Risland. Joins us every Thursday on our preview pod to talk about the upcoming opponent every Tuesday. Also to look back on the film from the previous Sunday. Lance, appreciate the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Thanks to Brian. Thanks to Lance for joining us. All right, it's time for us to make our picks for this game on Sunday. So, Ashley, lead us off.
Well, it's not a good start, I suppose, for Browns fans because I am picking the Pittsburgh Steelers to win this game. Obviously, they're currently 3-1. This is just a nightmare scenario for me when it comes to the Browns because they haven't won a regular season game in Pittsburgh since 2003, correct?
Correct.
So we have that working against them. The Browns just had their international game, did not take the bye after it. So they're going on the road to face the 3-1 Steelers who love turning the football over against a quarterback who, as Dan said in our first segment, has a lot of kryptonite when it comes to this Browns defense. And look, I think it might not be as ugly as people are expecting, but I just think this is a really tough draw for this football team right now. And for Dillon Gabriel, even though he's played in tough environments in college and all of the college football he played, the 60 plus games he played, there is just something different for this football team when they go to Pittsburgh. It is, I've still never covered a win for them in Pittsburgh because I wasn't on the beat yet when they won that wild card game. So until I see one, I feel like I can't pick one. I'm going Steelers 24, Browns 16.
Yeah, that environment, I forget where I said this, but when you look at that environment, the NFL doesn't have a lot of places that feel like these big college environments, but that's one of them. That stadium, when you're there, they blow that horn all the time. They do Renegade in the fourth quarter. Like, there's just something about that place that makes it really, really difficult, especially at night. This obviously is not a night game, so I guess the Browns have that going for them. Listen, I would love to pick the Browns in an upset in this game, and like Myles Garrett could wreck this game. That's always on the table. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is old. He doesn't move like he used to. He does get the ball out quickly. He doesn't love to get hit. So, I think Myles could have a 2 or 3 sack game on Sunday. Maybe that leads to a couple of turnovers. Maybe that leads to a defensive touchdown. I don't know, but until I see this offense, Ashley, I'm going to steal this from you. Until I see this offense like actually do something and actually be productive. And certainly I think you can move the ball in this Steelers defense. You can run it on them. You can throw it on them. They're very bend but don't break, but they live off these turnovers. They live off these big plays. I've seen too many TJ Watt bat the ball up in the air and he gets intercepted moments. And with Dillon Gabriel, that's certainly in play. He had some passes batted against the Vikings. And that's something that they've been driving home in Pittsburgh is get those arms up, bat the football. So I just can't pick the Browns to win this game because of all that stuff, because of those circumstances you mentioned, Pittsburgh getting healthier, coming off the bye, the Browns still coming over from London. They've made 2 big trades this week. We talked about it, even though it's not like fire sale time, those 2 trades have to have some sort of impact on a team and on a roster. So they've kind of had to deal with the mentality of losing a guy like Joe Flacco, losing a beloved guy like Greg Newsome. So I think that lingers too. And even if Tyson Campbell's a perfect fit for this scheme, and even if playing cornerback wherever you are, that's a big ask to put him out there 4 days after he gets here or whatever it's going to be. So all of that leads to me just having to make the chalky pick here, and I'm going to pick the Steelers. What was your score, Ashley? I don't want to pick the same score.
24-16.
Okay, so I'm going to go Steelers 22, Browns 14. That'll be my pick. I think it'll be even a closer game than that.
8-point differences for both of us.
Yeah, there we go. We're math people here. I think it will feel like a close game, and it could be like the Minnesota game where the Browns are in it late. Maybe they even have the lead late. But I just think there's too much working against them in this game, and the Steelers are feeling pretty good about where they are.
Why do I feel like there's a chance we're all 3 going to be wrong again?
Well,
It's because Dan, once again, did a good job of talking about the ways an upset could happen.
Yeah.
Dan has a tendency to do this, and it's made me change my pick before.
And then I don't pick it.
Yeah.
We were all wrong last week. We all thought that the Browns were going to beat the Vikings. We thought that they would be able to get to Carson Wentz. We thought they'd be able to get him to turn the ball over. We thought they'd be able to exploit an offensive line that was decimated. They had 4 starters out by the time they got to the 4th quarter. And lo and behold, they lost on that last drive.
Can I defend us though? Had I told you in that preview pod, the Browns are going to have a 3-point lead, Carson Wentz is going to have the ball 80 yards away at the 20-yard line, and the defense is going to be on the field, I think everybody would.
That?
No. But if I had said that, like if I had set up that scenario for you, if I had been like, Browns up 3, Vikings have the ball with, what was it, 3 minutes left, 2 minutes, something left.
3:05.
Yeah, 3:05 left, defense on the field, 20-yard line. I think we'd all have picked the Browns to still win that game.
Absolutely. I mean, even Jim Schwartz said today that he hasn't been able to keep food down since that drive. It was heartbreaking for everybody. Denzel Ward wasn't able to do the job that he usually does on that drive, took full accountability for the game-winning touchdown pass, gave up another 21-yard pass to Justin Jefferson. That's not like Denzel Ward. So as you said, in our defense, we were almost right. But I have to make it a clean sweep here. I'm very sorry, Browns fans, but I just cannot pick the Browns to go into Pittsburgh and win this game when their offense just hasn't come together yet. And it would be nice for everybody involved, including us, if they would win a game, because everybody's happier and easier to cover. Not that we're rooting for the Cleveland Browns because we're objective, but it's a little easier to cover a football team when people are willing to cooperate with you and talk to you, and it keeps things relevant for a while. So it would be nice if they could go in there and beat the Steelers for some of those kinds of reasons. But I'm just not feeling it. I am not feeling it because of the offense of the Cleveland Browns matching up against that defense of the Pittsburgh Steelers, opportunistic, aggressive, and it's just going to be really tough. So, and once again, we've been talking a lot about the fact that Quinshon Judkins is running the ball really well. But if you can stack the box and you're not respecting the pass and you take away the run, well, then you lose the best thing you have going for you right now. So for those reasons, I'm picking the Steelers to win this game 24-17.
So we're all about the same range then with kind of where we're picking them. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. If you're not listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're listening, just go search for Orange and Brown Talk. Get subscribed in those places. If you want to watch on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. That's our YouTube channel. There's an Orange and Brown Talk tab right there that you can click on and see a bunch of our podcasts on video. You can also follow us on Twitter. It's Orange Brown Talk, and our Instagram is Orange and Brown Talk. Oh, I do have to tell you about Football Insider as well. Cleveland.com/Browns, the blue banner at the top of the page to get involved with that. For Mary Kay, Ashley, Lance, Brian, the whole crew that joined us today, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.